You are welcome to session 6 of Unit 2, which is the last session of the unit. And in this session, we'll be looking at institutional regulation of audit practice in Ghana. Institutional regulation of audit practice in Ghana. At the end of the session, you should be able to outline institutions like International Federation of Accountants, the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana, Ghana Audit Service, and the Internal Audit Agency, how they regulate the audit practice in Ghana. So this is the objective that must be achieved at the end of the session. Introduction. We know that audit practice in Ghana is under institutional regulations. And then institutions such as the International Federation of Accountants, IFAC, ICAG, Ghana Audit Service, and then the Internal Audit Agency, they help to regulate audit practice in Ghana. So all these institutions provide guidelines on how audit should be conducted, and those practices have been adopted in Ghana. For example, ICAG is in Ghana, the Ghana Audit Service and the Internal Audit Service all provide guidelines that are to regulate how audit is supposed to be practiced, conducted in the country. Now let's go to the standard setting initiative. The standard setting initiative. Now there has to be certain standard. There has to be the basic principles that will guide how the audit should be performed, and then the conduct of the auditors as well. And we've looked at the overview of the international standards on auditing in the previous session. Now when we take the audit and assurance services, the International Auditing and Assurance Standard Board develop international standards on auditing and then international standards on review engagement, which deal with the audit and the review of historical financial statement. And then they also have international standards on assurance engagement. We've looked at all this in the previous session. Now, these standards basically serve as the benchmark for high quality auditing and then assurance standards and statements worldwide. So they establish the standard to provide guidance for auditors and other auditors, giving them the tool to cope with the increase and the changing demand for reports on the financial reporting and then any other financial information. They also provide a specialized guidelines, and all these are in the previous session. Now when we come to the ethics, the institutions develop a code of ethics to guide the behavior of auditors and what they are supposed to do. So they establish the ethical requirements for auditors and provide some kind of conceptual framework for auditors to ensure the compliance with the fundamental principles and then other professional ethics. Now when you come to the public sector accounting, with the public sector accounting, IFAC's International Public Sector Accounting Standard Board usually focuses on the development of high quality financial reporting standard for use by the public sector entities. Now they develop a comprehensive body of IPSAS, that is International Public Sector Accounting Standard, and then these must be followed. They provide the guidelines for how things or transactions are supposed to be recorded in the public sector, how reports are supposed to also be prepared at the end of the day. With regards to education, which is the fourth point here, with the education, the institutions work to advance the accounting education program worldwide so that they can equip members and even practitioners with the new development on how to perform the audit. Now, so they developed the international education standards. They also set the benchmark for the education of members of the accountancy profession. And what the most important part of it is that all members are required to comply with those standards, which has to address the education process leading to the qualification of the auditor as well as the ongoing professional development of the members. So before you join any profession, you need to first of all pass their exam. And when you qualify by passing the exam to when you're on the job, you have to continually educate yourself and then upgrade yourself as well. Now, with the small and medium sized practices, with this one, IFAC focus on providing support for another growing uh, constituency that has to do with the small and medium sized practices. So standards are being developed to guide how transactions and reporting pertaining to the small and medium enterprises are to be complied with. Now, when it comes to developing notes, which is the last but one item. Now, IFAC's developing nations committee support the development of the accountancy profession in all regions worldwide. So they provide this kind of support to any accountancy profession, irrespective of wherever you find yourself. IFAC provide it. Then we have the IFAC member body compliance program. The IFAC body member body compliance program um, required to or is enable members to demonstrate how they have used their best endeavors subject to national laws and regulations to implement the standard issued by IFAC and then the International Accounting Standard Board. So if you are a member of IFAC, they ensure that you have to demonstrate how best you have been able to um, comply with the laws, implement the standards and code that has been issued by the committee. So these are some of the standard setting initiatives what will inform the institutions to come out with a standard to regulate activities in these areas. Now, the International Accounting Federation of Accountants, that is IFAC, is a global organization for the accountancy profession. And this organization has been founded in 1977 and has more than 175 members and associates in more than 130 countries and jurisdictions, which represents almost 3 million accountants employed in public practice, industry, and commerce, government, and then academia. So it accounts about 3 million accountants. Now, what is the mission of IFAC? What is its primary activities? What is its core activities? Now, the mission of IFAC is to serve the public interest. And in serving the public interest, to continue to strengthen the worldwide accountancy profession. And it's also to contribute to the development of strong international economies by establishing and promoting adherence to the high quality professional standard. Its other mission or primary objective is furthering the international convergence of such standards. So any standard that has been provided, established to ensure high quality, they have to ensure that there is some convergence in that. And then their last but one or the last mission is speaking out on public interest issues where professions expertise is most relevant. So we look at the first one being that it's serve the public interest, and as such it has to speak out on those public interests on issues which borders on the professional expertise. So you have to come and give their expert knowledge in the field to serve the public interest. Now, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, this is the structure of it or how it look like. First of all, the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana was established by an act of parliament, and then the Chartered Act 1963 at 179. So this is the act that established it. Now it is a body corporate having perpetual succession and may sue and be sued in its corporate name. So when we talk about the institute, it's an institute, and then it has the power to sue and sue in its name. So it's having body corporate with perpetual succession. Now, when you come to the council, or the institute is governed by a council, and the council consists of 11 members, all of whom shall be members of the institute. So we have 4 members of the council shall be appointed by the minister, and 7 members, of whom not more than 4 shall be accountants in active practice, and shall be elected by members of the institute at a general meeting. So these people come together to form the board. Then we have qualification. Now, before you become a member of this institute, you need to qualify. So the educational program set in place for you to pass your exams and qualify to be a member of this institute. Then we have restrictions. Now, the institute provides some sort of restrictions on how auditors are to, or members are to, conduct themselves. The professional accountant, what is expected of you to do and what is not expected of you to do. Now, we have discipline procedures. Just like any institutions, there's bound to be conflict, there's bound to be misunderstanding. And if those things happen, you didn't perform your duties well, what are the disciplinary procedures that you have to go through? So the institute provide guidelines on how this is to be done. Now, we have sanctions. Sanctions are also there. So here you have violated a principle. You did not comply with certain regulations pertaining to the institute. Then what will happen is that you can be sanctioned, you can be suspended, your membership can also be revoked at the end of the day. Now, the council may strike off the register of the institute the name of what? A chartered accountant, if it is satisfied that he is unfit to practice the profession of an accountancy by reason that he has been guilty of professional misconduct or has become subject to any disqualification. So these are some of the sanctions. It can take you off from the register, and every association, depending on what you've done, the level, and then the kind of disrepute it brings to the profession, it will be sanctioned. Now let's look at the Ghana Audit Service as one of the institutions that also regulates audit in Ghana. Now, when it comes to the appointment of the Auditor General, the appointment shall be done by the President in consultation with the Council of State. Now, the office of the Auditor General shall be a public office, of course, and then a person appointed to be the Auditor General shall, before entering upon the duties of his office, take and subscribe the oath of the Auditor General. So before we swear you in, you have to take an oath to do that. Now, the auditor shall retire after attaining the age of 60 years, but may be engaged for a limited period of not more than 2 years at a time, but not exceeding 5 years in all. And upon such other terms and conditions of the President, acting in consultation with the Council of State, they shall determine that. So at age of 60, all public servants must retire. If he has to go re-engage your service for 2 years, and then if there is a need with the maximum you can have shouldn't exceed 5 years, and the president has to do that in consultation with the Council of State. Now, the salary and allowances payable and the facilities and privileges available to the Auditor General shall be determined by the President on recommendation of not more than 5 persons appointed by the President. So they have to act in accordance with the advice of the Council of State. So these people appointed has to go and determine the salary of the Auditor General. Now, the salary that will be paid to the Auditor General has to be charged to the consolidated fund. Charged to the consolidated fund. Now, the Auditor General has to audit the public account generally as his duty. He has to also audit of foreign exchange transaction, provide audit of statutory corporation. Then he has to also examine the receipt of Controller and Accountant General report on the public account. He has to submit a special audit report to Parliament, and he has the power to disallow and surcharge any officer or public servant. He is also independent and has powers to or is independent, is not subject or under any undue influence from any person. He has to also adhere to the international practices on auditing. Then he has to submit his report to Parliament. So the Act specifies that these and others must be done by the Auditor General in performing his duties and responsibilities. Now, he has to present this and then debate by Parliament of the Auditor's General report. So when the Auditor General presents a report, this report must be discussed in Parliament and debated on. And then the Auditor General also have to be audited by a different institution in charge of that. So they can appoint a different body to audit the service of or the Auditor General. Now, he has also performed any other audit as requested by Parliament. He has to publish the report on the various public sector entities, and then all the findings from the audit must be published. And then he has to also submit annual report on the activities of the service. So this is what the Act requires or mandates the Auditor General to do as one of the institutions that regulate audit profession in Ghana. So in summary, we've been able to look at the outline or be able to outline how IFAC, ICA, and audit practices in Ghana regulate the audit practice in the country. Thank you and see you in the next unit.